The Land Between, 100 Years of War. Prologue. The earth here is black, not metaphorically. The soil of the Donbas is black as coal, rich as blood. For 100 years, armies have marched across it. Germans, Russians, Ukrainians, Reds, Whites, partisans, volunteers. They come, they fight, they die. The earth absorbs them all. This is the story of a land that has never known peace, of people who have lived through Stalin's famine, Hitler's occupation, Soviet collapse, and now a war without end. Of families split by borders drawn in blood. Of soldiers who wake up one day to find themselves firing at their own cousins. It is not a story of politicians or generals. It is the story of a miner who picked up a rifle in 2014 and became a legend. Of a teacher who watched her school burn twice, once in 1943, once in 2022. Of a Russian paratrooper who discovered, in a Ukrainian prisoner of war camp, that his captor was his mother's nephew. Of a Serbian volunteer who came to fight for an idea and found only mud and grief. Of a surgeon who operated on both sides, stitching together the bodies of boys who should have been brothers. This is the land between, East and West, Russian and Ukrainian, Soviet and independent. It has belonged to everyone and to no one, and its people have paid the price. This is their story. Part 1. The Black Earth. The Donbas was never a nation. It was a frontier, a place where Russian peasants and Ukrainian Cossacks, Greek merchants and German colonists, Jewish shtetls and Tatar settlements all mixed in the vast steppe. Catherine the Great gave the land to her generals. The Tsars built factories. The Soviets dug mines. In 1932, Stalin's collectivization starved millions across Ukraine. The Holodomor, the terror famine. In the Donbas, the dead were buried in mass graves. The Black Earth swallowed them. In 1943, the Germans retreated from Stalingrad and made their stand here. The Battle of the Donbas raged for months. Whole villages vanished. The front line moved back and forth, grinding everything to dust. When the Red Army finally advanced, they found entire towns empty, burned, the soil salted with ash. Valentina Ivanovna was 12 years old then. She remembers the German tanks rolling through her village near Debaltseve. She remembers the partisans in the woods. She remembers her father, a miner, digging a shelter in the garden and telling her, "The earth is our mother. She will protect us." The earth did not protect him. He was shot in 1943, trying to cross the front line to find bread. 70 years later, Valentina Ivanovna is 92. She lives in the same village. The roads are the same. The mines are the same. The guns are back. She says, "I have lived through 3 wars. The Germans came and they left. The Russians came and they stayed. Now the Russians are back and the Ukrainians are fighting them. And the earth is the same. It drinks blood and then it gives us coal. It does not care who owns it." Part 2. The Miner and the Rifle. Oleksiy was a miner, 3rd generation. His grandfather descended into the pits in 1935, dug coal for Stalin, survived the war, died of black lung in 1968. His father worked the same seam, saw the Soviet Union collapse, watched the mines privatize and the wages disappear. Oleksiy started in 1998 when he was 18. He knew nothing else. In 2014, the war came to his town. Not the war of news reports, but the war of neighbors turning on neighbors. The Maidan in Kiev, the ousted president, the green men with no insignia taking government buildings. Oleksiy did not understand politics. He understood that the mine was closing, that the pensions were not arriving, that people were angry. When the call came for volunteers to join the militia, some of his friends went. "We are Russian," they said. "We don't want to be ruled by nationalists from Lviv." Others went the other way, joining Ukrainian territorial battalions. "We are Ukrainian," they said. "We don't want to be ruled by Moscow." Oleksiy stayed home. For a month, he watched his town split. Men he had worked with for 20 years stopped speaking. Then the shelling started. He cannot remember the exact moment he picked up a rifle. He remembers his wife crying. He remembers his daughter, 12 years old, asking if the house would still be there when she came home from school. He remembers the men in camouflage coming to his door, asking if he was with them or against them. He chose the side of the militia, not because he believed in it, because his father had fought for the Soviet Union, because his grandfather had died a Soviet hero, because his language was Russian, because his village had always been Russian, and he could not imagine being anything else. He fought for 3 years. He lost 2 fingers on his left hand. He saw friends die. He learned to hate the word nationalist. And then, in 2017, the front line froze, and he went back to the mine. The mine had not waited for him. He found work as a security guard. He drinks now. He does not speak about the war. His daughter moved to Kiev in 2021. She calls him every week. She has a Ukrainian boyfriend. She tells him she loves him. He tells her to be safe. In February 2022, the shelling started again. Oleksiy sits in his basement and listens. He has not picked up a rifle. He does not know which side he would choose. He only knows that the earth is black and the coal is still there and his daughter is far away. Part 3. The Teacher and the School. In 1943, when the German army retreated from the Donbas, they burned the school in the village of Novoselivka. The teacher, Maria Hryhorivna, watched from a cellar with her 2 children. She had taught in that school for 20 years. She had taught German soldiers' children and Russian soldiers' children because the war brought everyone. When the Red Army came, they rebuilt the school. Maria Hryhorivna went back to teaching. She died in 1961, and her daughter, also a teacher, took her place. In 2014, the school was hit by shelling. The roof collapsed. The walls stood, but the windows were gone. The books scattered. The desks splintered. The teacher then was Nadiya, granddaughter of Maria. She had taught in the same building for 30 years. She watched the soldiers come and go. She kept teaching, in the basement, with no heat, no electricity, just the children and the books she had saved from the rubble. In 2022, the school burned again. Nadiya is 73 now. She lives in a small apartment in a nearby town, evacuated by volunteers who drove through the shelling to get her out. Her school is gone. Her village is gone. She has a photograph of her grandmother, Maria, standing in front of the school in 1950, smiling in a white blouse, the children in neat rows behind her. Nadiya says, "My grandmother taught me that a school is not a building. It is a promise that children will grow up, that they will learn, that the future is worth building. I have kept that promise for 50 years. Now, I do not know if I will see the school rebuilt again, but I know someone will teach there. Someone always does." Part 4. The Captive and the Guard. Sergeant Dmitry was a Russian paratrooper. He was 22 years old when he was sent to Ukraine in September 2022. He had been told he was going to protect Russian speakers, to fight Nazis, to defend the motherland. He had never been to Ukraine. He had never thought about it. His unit was ambushed near Kharkiv. He woke up in a Ukrainian field hospital with a bandaged leg and a Ukrainian soldier standing over him. The soldier's name was Ivan. He was from a village in the Donbas. He had been a teacher before the war. He spoke Russian with the same accent as Dmitry's mother. Ivan asked Dmitry where he was from. Dmitry said a town in Siberia. Ivan said, "My mother's brother moved to Siberia in 1990. He married a Russian woman. His son would be about your age. What is your mother's maiden name?" Dmitry said it. Ivan went pale. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, showed Dmitry a picture of an old man standing in front of a wooden house. "That is my uncle," Ivan said. "Your grandfather." Dmitry stared. The man in the photo had the same eyes as his mother, the same high cheekbones, the same hands. For 3 weeks, Dmitry was held in the same camp. Ivan visited him every day. They talked about families, about the war, about why they were there. Dmitry could not answer. Ivan said he could not answer either. When Dmitry was released in a prisoner exchange, Ivan walked him to the gate. They did not shake hands. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then Dmitry said, "Tell your uncle. Tell him his sister died in 2018. She never stopped talking about him." Ivan nodded. He did not know what to say. Dmitry is back in Siberia now. He does not talk about the war. He has a photograph of his grandfather, the one Ivan showed him. He looks at it sometimes. He thinks about the land between, about the family that is his and not his, about the war that took his leg and his innocence, about the cousin who could have been his brother. Part 5. The volunteer from Belgrade. Marko came from Serbia. He was 25 when he arrived in Donbas in 2015. He had read about the war on the internet. He had seen the videos. He had heard the stories of Russian-speaking people being shelled by Ukrainian nationalists. He had grown up in the shadow of the NATO bombing of Belgrade in 1999. He hated the West. He hated NATO. He believed that Russia was fighting the same fight Serbia had fought. He crossed the border through Russia, joined a pro-Russian militia, and was sent to the front line near Debaltseve. He expected a war of movement, of glory, of comradeship. He found mud, cold, boredom, and sudden, terrifying violence. He learned to fire a machine gun. He learned to dig trenches. He learned to tell the difference between incoming mortar rounds by sound. He learned to eat cold rations out of a can, to sleep in a hole, to keep his weapon clean, even when his hands were frozen. He also learned that the men he was fighting with were not heroes from a movie. They were miners, truck drivers, farmers, old men, young boys. Some were idealists. Most were just defending their homes. Some were criminals, drunks, bullies. They did not understand why a Serb had come to fight. They called him our crazy Balkan brother and laughed at his accent. He fought for 2 years. He saw men die. He killed men. He does not know how many. He stopped counting. In 2017, he returned to Belgrade. He could not find work. He could not talk about what he had seen. His friends did not understand. His family did not want to know. When the war escalated in 2022, he thought about going back. He did not. He sits in a small apartment, watching the news, drinking rakia, looking at photographs of men whose faces he is already forgetting. He wonders if he was a hero or a fool. He wonders if the war was worth it. He knows it was not. He says, "In Serbia we have a saying, the dead are not guilty, but the living are. We are all guilty. We went to fight for someone else's land, someone else's history, and we forgot our own. Now I am here and the war is still there, and I do not know if I will ever be free of it." Part 6. The Doctor. Dr. Valentina Pavlivna is a surgeon. She works in a hospital in Pokrovsk, a city in the Donbas that has been on the front line since 2014. She has operated on Ukrainian soldiers, Russian soldiers, civilians, children, prisoners of war. She does not ask which side they are on. She only asks where they are bleeding. She started in 2014 when the first wounded arrived. She had trained in the Soviet system, worked in the same hospital for 30 years. She thought she had seen everything. She had not seen a man with half his face gone. She had not seen a child with shrapnel in her spine. She had not seen a soldier's leg blown off, the bone white and splintered, the blood pulsing. She learned to work faster. She learned to do triage, to decide who could be saved, who could not. She learned to put her feelings away, to focus on the work, to keep her hands steady even when her heart was breaking. In 2015, she operated on a Russian prisoner. He was 19 years old, a conscript from a village in Siberia. His arm had been shattered by a mortar. She saved the arm. He cried when he woke up, calling for his mother. She held his hand. She did not tell him that his mother might never know what happened to him. In 2016, her own son was mobilized into the Ukrainian army. She did not try to stop him. She treated him when he was wounded. A piece of shrapnel in his shoulder. She removed it herself. Her hands did not shake. In 2022, the hospital was hit. A Russian missile destroyed the maternity wing. The surgeons worked through the night, pulling the wounded from the rubble. Dr. Valentina saved a baby girl from the wreckage. The baby's mother did not survive. She does not go home anymore. She sleeps in the hospital, on a cot in her office. Her son is fighting near Bakhmut. She has not heard from him in 3 weeks. She keeps working. She keeps operating. She keeps her hands steady. She says, "I have sewn together the bodies of boys who should be playing football, learning a trade, falling in love. I have held the hands of dying men who called for their mothers in Russian and in Ukrainian. The language is the same. The mothers are the same. The blood is the same. I do not know why we are killing each other. I only know that I will keep stitching. Someone must." Part 7. The Family Divided. The Petrenkos lived in Horlivka, a city in the Donbas that became a front line in 2014. In 2014, the families split. The father, Serhiy, stayed in Horlivka, which came under the control of the pro-Russian forces. The mother, Oksana, took their 2 children and fled to government-controlled territory, to a small town near Kramatorsk. The eldest son, Andriy, was 22. He stayed with his father. The youngest, Darina, was 16. She went with her mother. For 8 years, they communicated by phone, when there was signal, when the shelling allowed. Serhiy worked in the mines, then in the militia, then back in the mines. Oksana found work at a school. Andriy was drafted into the pro-Russian forces. Darina finished school, went to university in Kyiv, became a journalist. In 2022, the front line moved. Horlivka was shelled again. The family lost contact for weeks. When they finally reached each other, Serhiy told Oksana, "I'm too old to run. The house is all we have. I will stay." Andriy was somewhere near Bakhmut. He did not call. Darina was reporting from the front line, sending dispatches to a Ukrainian news site. In May 2022, Darina received a message from a number she did not recognize. It was her brother. He wrote, "I am in a hospital near Donetsk. I was wounded. I am okay. I do not know why I am telling you. Maybe because I want someone to know I am alive." She wrote back, "I am near the front line too. I am reporting. I am okay." He wrote, "Are you on the other side?" She wrote, "I am on my side." He did not respond. They have not spoken since. Darina still reports. Andriy is back on the front line, somewhere. Serhiy is still in Horlivka, in the house his grandfather built in 1947. Oksana is still in Kramatorsk, teaching children who have lost their homes. Darina says, My brother and I grew up in the same room, under the same roof, reading the same books, watching the same films. Now we are strangers. He thinks I am a traitor. I think he is a fool. But at night I pray for him. I do not know what else to do. Part 8. The Battle for the Forest. Serebryansky Forest, a patch of trees between the Siversky Donets River and the front line. For 2 years it has been a killing ground. Ukrainian and Russian forces have fought for it, metre by metre, tree by tree. The forest is a maze of trenches, dugouts, shell craters. The trees are splintered, burned, stripped of leaves. The ground is littered with spent cartridges, torn uniforms, photographs of wives and children. Oleksiy was a Ukrainian soldier. He was 24. He was deployed to the forest in August 2022. His unit was told to hold the line. They held it for 3 months. They lost half their men. Oleksiy survived. He wrote letters home, pages and pages, describing the mud, the cold, the constant fear. He wrote about the Russian soldiers they fought. He wrote, "They are like us, young, scared. They do not want to be here, but here we are." In October, he was hit by shrapnel, a piece of metal lodged in his side near his kidney. He was evacuated, operated on, sent back. He returned to the forest in December. In January, he went out on patrol. He never came back. His body was found 3 days later in a shell crater, his rifle still in his hands. He was 24 years old. His mother, Lyudmila, lives in a village in western Ukraine. She received the news on a January morning. She did not cry. She went to the garden and dug a hole and planted a tree. She does not know where her son is buried. He is somewhere in the forest that is not a forest anymore, the forest that is a graveyard. She says, "I gave him to the land took him. Maybe that is how it should be. I do not know. I only know that I will never see him again. And the tree I planted will grow, and I will water it, and I will think of him. That is all I have." Part 9. The Evacuees. In March 2022, the buses came. They came to the cities and villages of the Donbas, to the towns that had been shelled for weeks, to the places where the water was gone and the electricity was gone and the food was running out. They came with signs, "Evacuation to the west." The people lined up, women with children, old people, the sick, the wounded. They carried suitcases, plastic bags, photographs, nothing. They climbed onto buses that smelled of diesel and fear. They left their homes. Some of them knew they would never return. Nina was 78. She had lived in the same apartment in Bakhmut for 50 years. She had raised her children there, buried her husband there. She had a garden with roses. She had a cat named Masha. She left the cat behind. There was no room. The bus drove for days. Through Dnipro, through Vinnytsia, through Lviv. Finally, it stopped at a small town in the Carpathian Mountains. A school had been turned into a shelter. Cots, blankets, soup, volunteers. Nina was given a bed. She sat on it, her suitcase between her feet, and looked out the window at the mountains. She had never seen mountains. The Donbas is flat. The Donbas is coal and steppe. The mountains were strange, beautiful, foreign. She stayed in the shelter for 3 months. Then she was moved to a small apartment, donated by a family who had left for Germany. She lives there now. She has a new cat. A stray, grey, with one ear missing. She named her Masha. She does not watch the news. She does not want to know what is happening to her city, her apartment, her garden. She does not want to know if the roses are still alive. She says, "I am an old woman. I have lived through Stalin, through Hitler, through the collapse of the Soviet Union. I thought I would die in my own bed, in my own city. Now I am here, in a place I have never seen, with a cat that is not mine, waiting for a war to end. I do not know if I will see my home again. I do not know if I want to. It is easier not to know. Part 10. The Memory. The war is not over. It may not be over for a long time, but the dead are already being remembered. In cemeteries across Ukraine, new graves appear. Fresh earth, fresh flowers, fresh photographs of young faces. In Russia, the same. Mothers receive folded flags. Wives receive medals. Children grow up without fathers. In the Donbas, the land is scarred. The fields are cratered. The forests are burned. The cities are hollow shells. But the mines still produce coal. The factories still smoke. The people still live, somehow. Valentina Ivanovna, the old woman who survived 3 wars, is still in her village. She is 95 now. She does not go out much. But on spring mornings, she walks to the cemetery, to the grave of her father, who was shot in 1943, and to the new graves of young men who died in 2022. She stands there for a long time. She does not pray. She does not speak. She just stands, and the wind blows across the steppe, and the earth is black, and the sky is grey. She says, "I have seen too much. I have lived too long. But I am still here, and as long as I am here, I will remember. I will remember the Germans and the Russians and the Ukrainians. I will remember the soldiers and the civilians, the living and the dead. I will remember that they were all someone's children, someone's parents, someone's hope. And I will tell the young people, when they ask, that war is not glory. War is mud and blood and mothers crying. War is a waste, a terrible, stupid waste." She looks across the field where the graves are, where the mines are, where the black earth stretches to the horizon. "The earth does not care," she says, "but we must care. We must remember, because if we forget, they will do it again. They will always do it again." Epilogue. The land between is quiet tonight. The shelling has stopped for now. The stars are out. The same stars that shone on the partisans in 1943, on the miners in 1935, on the Cossacks in 1700. They do not change. They do not choose sides. They just shine. Somewhere, a mother is waiting for a call. Somewhere, a soldier is writing a letter. Somewhere, a child is drawing a picture of a house with a garden and a cat. Somewhere, the earth is black and waiting. The war is not over, but the memory is beginning. And in that memory, perhaps, there is the seed of something else. Something like peace. The land does not forget. Neither should we.